people of Reddit that honestly believe they have been abducted by aliens. What was your experience like? I live in a pretty secluded part of Washington state. I was in my late teens and my parents had gone to Seattle for something, so I was put in charge of the property. I was closing everything up, that is the barn we own and some other small utility buildings, when I look up and see 3 reddish-orange lights in a triangular formation. They were just floating there, as if they were magnified stars, so magnified, in fact, that everything was slightly illuminated by their warm hue. I'm mesmerized, standing there, and suddenly lose my sense of balance, as if the ground in front of me has begun rising, and I pass out. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground in the barn I had locked up, according to my watch, half an hour before. Needless to say, I was petrified. I scurried to the house with my tail between my legs, scared and confused. I slept not at all that night and any sense of security I had was gone. Even though I was locked safely in my house, I felt hopelessly exposed. In hindsight, I think it's possible I was lightheaded, opened the barn door and fell down, but it still shakes me up thinking about it. Holy shit, something similar happened to me back in 2005. I was living out in the boonies with my mum. I was 15 years old. I had been talking with this girl on and off for weeks and I was on the phone with her. It was just before dark when this chick was telling me that if I come over to her house she will sneak outside to hang out with me as soon as her parents go to bed. Luckily she only lived like 2 miles away and I had a bike. Horny teenage me didn't take long to decide right then and there I was gonna make the trip. Luckily my mum always went to bed super early as well. She texts me sometime after 10 p.m. that her parents went to bed. It's on. I leave for her house. As I'm riding my bike down these dark country roads I see almost exactly what you described you saw. Orange glowy lights in a triangular formation. They were just hanging there still. I stopped for a second to get a better look because there were some trees obstructing my view and they started looking bigger the more I looked at them. I started to feel this really weird sensation that I can only describe as similar to vertigo. I completely black out. I wake up and I'm still on the side of the road but not where I was before. I got super confused and couldn't quite figure out where I was for a minute. I pull out my phone to look at the time. It's dead. My bike is nowhere to be found. I start heading down the road in what I thought was the direction I came and suddenly realized where I was. I was in the opposite direction of my house from where I started. Like, I was on the same road, just on the other end of it. I turn around when I realize this and run home. I get home and plug in my phone. It's like 2 a.m. and I have a bunch of missed calls and texts from that chick asking where I'm at. I go to bed and sleep like shit the rest of the night. The next day I call that girl and I tell her what happened. She sounds skeptical. I ask her what time she called me the first time last night after I left. She said she called me at around 11 o'clock and it wouldn't go through. I left sometime after 10. I know my phone was at nearly full battery because it was on the charger before I left the house. I do find my bike later that day in the same place I remember stopping. It was just laying there on the side of the road. I remember having really crazy dreams and a bad headache for a couple weeks after this happened. You know, after the first couple weeks I never really had dreams much anymore. Still don't. Not sure if it's related at all though. I can't say for sure it was aliens or abduction or whatever, but I'll be honest, I'm not normally an anxious guy, but being outside alone at night has creeped me the fuck out ever since. Staring into the night sky gives me anxiety when I'm by myself now. Fuck everything about that night. I'm not even sure I want to know what happened. Cock-blocking aliens. Not entirely sure if we were abducted, but my wife, who is a non-believer, and I both have missing time. We were having sex on our bed when we suddenly both came to, and were in totally different places in the room. Not sure how much time had passed, but she looked at me and said, "What the fuck just happened?" I said I wasn't sure. Neither of us was scared, and we were both incredibly tired. We decided we would just go to bed and talk about it in the morning. I looked up instances of missing time and a lot of them said the same thing. When they came to, they were just very tired, knew something was totally weird, but just wanted to go to sleep. I never told anyone this story because I never thought they would believe me. I was home along one evening and had gone to sleep for the night. I live with my so and 2 indoor cats, but she was out of state traveling for business. I woke up in the middle of the night, wasn't sure of time but it was completely dark, because my body was freezing cold. I actually like it cool when I sleep and usually have the temperature around 70 degrees or colder since I live in Central Texas. But this was different. I was ice cold but trapped in blankets. It was middle of summer so evenings and cold. When I grabbed my phone to look at the time, it seemed to be off and I pressed the on button but it didn't turn it on. Since I was half asleep, I shrugged this off. I walked out of my bedroom to go adjust the thermostat and noticed that the cats weren't around. This was weird because these furballs are always hanging out in the bed or around the bed. Anyhow, I walked to the thermostat and tried to adjust it, but the power to the thermostat, I have a Nest, was nil and the power to the house seemed to be off. I peeked out of the upstairs window to see if any of my neighbors were having power issues and noticed that all of their outdoor lights were working just fine. From the time I woke to this moment was probably 1-2 minutes maximum. I decide to wander downstairs to grab some water but am startled when I realize there is a glow of light coming from the first floor. The way my house is situated, I couldn't see the light until I had approached the stairs. I found this odd because the power seemed to be out just upstairs, which didn't make a lot of sense. I started walking down the stairs and began to hear a faint humming noise. The noise had a high pitch to it with arbitrary pulses of low sounds, almost like a muffled weed whacker that someone is throttling at random. As I continued to walk down the stairs, I spot a dark, slowly moving figure in the room with light at the bottom of the stairs. The next step that I take feels like I walked off the side of a cliff or was sucked into the floor. That is really the best way I can explain it because I don't remember what happened after that moment. I just lost all feeling from my body. My next memory is waking up again to the sound of my phone's alarm. Everything seemed back to normal. I sat there in bed, cat's back to being lazy in bed next to me, and tried to think about the 2-minute incident that happened in the middle of the night. I am not a sleepwalker and I was definitely not dreaming. My security systems app shows the time whenever a door is opened or closed. I realized that my security system was disarmed on the app and that the front door had been opened and closed several times throughout the night. I pulled up my security footage from the exterior cameras and was surprised to learn that there was zero footage from the night. Like the motion sensors reacted to a random car driving by around 10 p.m. and then the next thing is another random car in the morning. So something walked in and out of my front door but the cameras did not capture any footage. My neighbor across the street has a good security system that points at my house, so I asked if he can review the footage from his cameras. I told him some made up story about how I thought someone had broken into my truck. Anyway, he said it was weird because when he pulled up the footage from that night, his cameras did not record anything. Just a time gap once again. My first thought was that I was sleepwalking and that the memory was a dream, but it just couldn't have been. When I looked out of the window in the middle of the night, I distinctly recall a red pickup truck parked the wrong direction in front of the neighbor's house. I always notice when cars are parked left wheel to curb because I've gotten a ticket for this in the past. Anyhow, the truck was not there before I went to sleep, based on footage, but was there in the morning, based on footage. So the truck was there when I saw it in the middle of the night. I definitely woke up in the middle of the night, cold as ice. No cats, no working phone or thermostat. Saw the truck out of the window and then got warped by something on the stairs. A couple additional things were different in the house. The security system was disarmed and I definitely armed it before going to bed. The light was still on downstairs and that was absolutely off before I went to bed. My whole body smelled like burnt marshmallows. I know this is weird, but it's really how it smelled. And lastly, my 55-gallon fish tank that sits at the bottom of the stairs in the entryway was missing 2/3 of the water. Seriously, where the fuck did 40+ gallons of water go? The whole area around the tank was bone dry and the fish were fine. I think I was mind-fucked by some thirsty aliens. I was home alone in this little house I lived in the middle of nowhere. It was probably around 2 a.m. and I was just listening to music, enjoying having the place to myself for a change, when all of a sudden my dogs started going crazy. Normally, when someone pulls in the driveway or comes up to the back door, they go to the door. They heard the noise beyond and peek through the blinds to see who it is, but this night they are running all around the house from door to door, barking louder than they ever do. When I stood up to go see what the hell they were on about, I noticed that the whole house seemed to be lit up with a deep blue light. Turning into the living room, it became obvious that it was emanating in from each window. I put on my shoes to go outside and see who was out there, but by the time I got out there the light had faded away. There was no sound of a car engine or really anything, and where I lived you could hear a car coming from a mile away. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I had the weirdest sense of fight or flight where neither option seemed viable, like I was frozen to the spot. I wanted to turn around and get back inside, and then I just was right back in the chair I was listening to music in, as if I just blinked and there I was. Don't really like telling people about it because it scares me out so bad. About 20 years ago I was walking home from the shops with my dad and we stopped to watch some really odd lights in the sky. There were two lights, slightly bigger than the stars, zooming around and orbiting each other, making figure 8s etc. And then they stopped moving, got bigger and bigger until bright light filled the sky, and then they were gone. We carried on our journey home. We hadn't stopped for more than 5 minutes. The whole journey should have been 20 minutes. When we got home, my mum was freaking out. We had been gone for 65 minutes. Our watches were both still working but were 45 minutes behind every clock in the house. She had neighbors, friends about looking for us. I don't know what happened to us or what we saw. Maybe nothing.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to be entered into our iMac giveaway.